Welcome, everyone. We'll let everyone finish coming into the room. Okay, so we'll have a few people, we'll have people coming and going, obviously, but let's go ahead and get started. I am seeing lots of familiar faces, but just if you haven't been to office hours before, I'm Dr. Laura Markham, and I want you to also meet Heidi Whipple and also Diana Yoakley. And they both work on our team. Diana is, you may have seen her name in the Success Path membership stuff a lot. And Heidi is present there also, but runs our big group that is for everyone who's taking the course now or ever has. So if you'd like to ask a question at office hours, this is our December office hours. If you would like to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand. And Diana's going to keep the queue today. And we always give preference to people who haven't asked questions recently. And we also have a couple of pre-submitted questions today. We try to, if somebody has a problem with the time zone, we try to answer 2 questions max usually, and in an office hours. So we often start with one of our pre-submitted questions, and I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and do that today, and then we'll wrap up with the other one we have. So this first question we have is from a mom who has an 8-year-old and wonders how, this is like the $1 million question for parents. How can I get my 8-year-old daughter to take age-appropriate responsibilities around the house? And she gives a lot of examples of which I won't go into detail about, but basically is saying that she's having a hard time getting her daughter to help with anything. And this is an only child. So she's worried about whether she and her partner are enabling their daughter, because it seems easier to just do things than to get into a power struggle about them. So these include things like, if, making the bed, the child doesn't want to make the bed herself, she wants her mom to help, or, the child is at the table and needs a fork or a knife and says, will you get it for me? And then if mom says, no, honey, you should get it yourself, then dad will go get it. So it's how to manage this with the daughter and then also how to manage this with the partner. This is the question. So I'm going to actually ask, before I share any thing about how I would approach this, I'm going to ask whether anybody else on the team, like Diana or Heidi, have an idea of how you might approach that question, whether you have any words of wisdom for this mom.
Yeah, I can jump in. So I would say for an 8-year-old, it's somewhat developmentally appropriate where they're moving into more independence and autonomy kind of naturally as they get older, but also at some points kind of wanting to kind of come back and retreat back into attachment and feel closer to the parent as well as they venture out, kind of coming back and checking in. So I would just keep that in mind for parents of kids around this age group, that sometimes that autonomy can trigger more attachment as well, and kind of feeling a little bit more needy and acting a little bit younger maybe than they look. But the mom, I think she pointed out as well that it helps when they do special time, which is a big clue to the child's behavior. So really focusing on the connection. Sometimes when kids are whiny and needy, they're really asking for, do you see me? And then when they ask us to do these kind of mundane routine tasks for them, like, can you get my fork, or can you get my, can you grab my shoes? It's more of like a cry for attention, for connection. Can you connect with me? Can you be close with me? And so maybe spending some time connecting before directing. and answering obviously always in an empathic and validating tone. Um, so, I hear you really want my help with this. It can feel tough to do things on your own sometimes. Or, oh, it's so hard to get off that kitchen counter and grab your own fork. I bet you feel like you're stuck to the counter. You just can't even move, and maybe inviting some playfulness, because to them, it does feel like, I have to do everything. I have to be so grown up, and I still feel like I want to just lean into my parents sometimes. So often when we expect them to be more independent, what we need to do is bring them in closer, because when kids kind of get their cup filled, if they have the skills, once their cup is full, they will naturally want to go explore the world when they feel closer to the caregiver. So I would say focusing, there's a lot of other probably elements like offering choices and using when then statements. But to start, I think we have to focus on the emotional needs and spending more time connecting, maybe even babying them a little bit. More than usual, giving them what they're doing to us kind of proactively to fill that cup, that empty cup, and then praising effort when they actually do things on their own, and acknowledging that they can do it. It's just hard sometimes, and when it's hard, we can proactively fill their connection bucket. So that's kind of where I would start, with the connection, and then from there focus on if there's a skill. But I'm not sure if there's really a skill here missing. I think it's more of a looking for closer attachment in order to become more independent.
I think I love that. And I think it's true that kids often want to be nurtured. And so the way they express that is, oh, do this thing for me, right? And so if you can look for ways, as you said, almost to baby them, look for ways to pour that love into them, that then they start, it is a natural state for all of us to want mastery of things. So for wanting independence, wanting mastery is natural for kids. And if you have a kid who expects to be waited on, I do think it's totally appropriate to not wait on them hand and foot. But I think starting with connection, as you've said, Diana, is really important. And then after you've done some of that, then I would be happy to look at, okay, so you don't want to make your bed, and we have a family rule that says we all make our bed in the morning. I know it's hard to make it yourself. It's hard to make a bed. You can't be on both sides at once. Let's work together, right? So the working together, I think, when the child is learning any skill or has any chore, maybe your child's chore is to set the table for the family, and you can work with your child to do that chore as they get used to doing it and make it a fun connection opportunity. And then after a while, it'll be second nature to them. And I say a while, I mean at least a month and maybe more, maybe 3 months. But that at that point, then it's not a problem. It's an automatic thing, and they don't think of it as a big deal. But I do know that kids often resist chores because we ourselves think of chores as a really negative thing. So why would they want to do them, right? Whereas if we can present it more as this is a thing that we get to do together, you and me, then kids have a different attitude toward it often. Okay, well, I see we have a bunch of hands. Oh, Heidi, go ahead. I was going to say, I didn't know if we should open up for more things, but I do.
Right. I just have one thing to add to that.
Yeah.
In our house, we call them household contributions instead of chores, because we want to make it a more positive experience and that we are all contributing to our household.
I love that. That's great. Okay, thank you. And I see we have our list already here. And Rokia, would you like to start? You can unmute yourself.
Hi, nice to see you, Lara,
So nice to see you.
and all of you. I would like to ask something about my son. You know, he's a twin and he's 11. I already saw your video about the preteens. It was lovely. Thank you for all that knowledge and all the things you shared there. It was really, really nice. I couldn't do it because of the time, but it was lovely. And I'm worried about him because I feel he doesn't relate with his friends in a positive way. He doesn't. He's not managing to get like close friends. He sometimes criticizes other people to try and be like a bit show off, and he's expressing to me that he feels like not inside of the group. Like they do groups or teams, and he's always left out. And he has difficulties because he has dyslexia, and he has an amazing twin girlfriend, twin sister that is like really athletic and very leader. So I think his self-esteem is very low, and I'm trying to help him with all this respectful parenting, but I don't know. I'm feeling a bit sad about him because he doesn't get invited in many birthdays. You know, like he's a bit lonely, and I want to help him because he's a nice boy, but he's not being able to show the people all of his greatness. No.
It's so hard when our kids struggle socially, right? We just want so much for them, and it's very wounding for them and very wounding for us.
Yes.
Does anyone have any answers for Roku before I jump in? Anything you wanted to?
I can
Well-
add, I was just gonna say, you know, some kids are more extroverted, some are more introverted, and I've never met your son, but I would guess that part of him maybe is a little bit of a quieter guy. And for quieter people, sometimes they need like 1 or 2 good friends, maybe not 10. So readjusting your expectations of what his life should look like socially to he really just needs one person to hang out with to start, right? And probably for life, you know, like one close friend and maybe 2 or 3 others. But whereas your daughter, maybe it's hard not to compare them because it's such an extreme difference. But if you had 2 kids that were like him, you might be like, well, my kids, they have 2 good friends each. And while there's probably some opportunity for building some social skills, you know, some people are born with better social skills than others. And I think that's part of what makes them extroverts. They just practice it. They like that social setting. They practice it more. And if other kids don't like it, they just don't practice it as much. And then it becomes a little awkward. So yeah, teaching some social skills, definitely, but also kind of expectation wise, like what would his ideal social life look like where he would be happy, but maybe it wouldn't look exactly like your daughter's, you know?
Thank you.
You know, most people only have a couple of good friends. That is actually the way most humans are, and totally appropriate. But I'm hearing that he doesn't even have that. Is that correct?
He has 2 good friends, but they're not in the other class. So when they do groups in his own class, he gets left over. That's what he just explained me a couple of minutes ago. So I thought like it would be amazing to talk to you.
So how great that he does have 2 good friends, even though they're in the other class. That's terrific. So it sounds like you have a couple of very clear steps you could take here to support him, to me. One of them is to make sure he gets plenty of time to play with these 2 good friends who are in the other class. At times on weekends or after school would be really important because he does already feel close to them and connected, and that will develop his social skills. You know, when Diana says, help him develop social skills, probably most parents are like, well, how do I do that? One way to do it, I mean, obviously we do it by putting them with other kids, but one way to do it is with kids he already knows, right? So that because then he's motivated to play with them, to work things out with them, right? And so he does gain social skills that way. The other, I said there were a couple of clear steps you could take. The other step you could take is trying to support him in getting to know kids in his current class that you said he feels left out. He, in fact, resorts to showing off, putting other people down. It's very common that when humans feel left out, they get sad and hurt and they make mean remarks about other people who are not left out, right? It's just what humans, unfortunately, it's a standard way that the human mind works unless we learn to manage our own pain. And he's a kid, right? So he doesn't quite know how to manage his own pain. So there are 2 parts of this. One, we want to help him not feel so left out. And the other is we want to help him become aware of what he's doing. So when he does say something mean about somebody to you, you could say, that thing you said about that person, that other kid, sounds like it could really hurt that person's feelings if they heard it, or if he recounts to you something he said at school, that could hurt their feelings. I wonder if you were feeling sort of hurt yourself when you said something like that, right? So just helping him to notice this tendency to work out his own pain socially by putting someone else down, useful thing to do. But also we want to give him positive interactions with the kids in his class, right? So setting up play opportunities with if there's anyone in that class, who do you think you might enjoy, do you think he would like to come over? Do you think he would, maybe after school I could pick him up and pick you up and we could go out for ice cream or something? Would there be an opportunity that because sometimes kids this age are like, no, I'd be too embarrassed. I couldn't possibly initiate. And then you could say, well, do you want me to initiate with his mother? And he might be like, absolutely not. So it might be hard to initiate an interaction, but maybe there's somebody in the class that he'd like to do that with. If there isn't, then you could actually talk to the teacher about pairing him up with another kid for something, or like giving them an assignment that they have to do together after school. I mean, she's not going to come up with an assignment just for them, but maybe there's something the kids are going to work on anyway. And she could pair him with someone and you could invite them over to your house to work on the assignment together. And then he has cover, right? He's not actually initiating. He has, an excuse. So just some ways for him to feel less isolated in that classroom would be super helpful.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay. Our next person is Olia. If you can unmute yourself, and I am looking to see you on my screen, Olia, and I don't. Am I saying your name right? Is it Olia, maybe?
Yes, it's correct name.
Is it Olia?
It's Olia, it's right.
Oh,
Yes.
Olia.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, it's very nice to see you in person. I'm the first time in office hours.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're here.
I have a question about my son. He's 8 years old, and it seems like my husband, he doesn't really respect me very well in the family. It's always like I feel it now is getting translated into my son. That he makes scandals often, like my husband. He can put me down. He can scold me in front of the kids and stuff like that. And now I feel that my son feels the same way. Like he doesn't. It kind of translates into him, and I don't know how do I deal with this. How do I stop? I can't stop my husband, but I don't want my son to grow up with this attitude towards me and other women. So I have a question, like, what could I do? Do I say that dad is wrong? Do I like this is not the way to treat women? This is like do I put down his authority, or like what do I do? I don't know.
This is a big question and sort of a heartbreaking one, because you should not be in a position where you have to convince your child that you're worthy of respect, and they're getting that message from your partner that you're not. So it feels heartbreaking to me to hear it. It's a hard position for you to be in. So you said you couldn't stop your husband from doing this, but I think there's work to be done there that you could do with your husband. But before we get to that, let's start with your son. Do you have more than one child, or just this one child? Just the
I have a daughter as well. She's 10. Mhm.
Okay, so you have a 10-year-old daughter.
Mhm.
It is absolutely true that kids will pay attention to what the grown-ups around them do, and they learn about gender roles from watching. And so I think you can tell your child, your son, if your son says something to you that's disrespectful, you absolutely I think not only can, but I would suggest that you do say to him, excuse me, let's try that over again. Notice I'm not crying. I'm not lashing out at him. I have some humor in my voice. Go ahead.
I lost your connection for like 1 minute. Can you repeat? I didn't hear
Yes.
anything.
So give me an example of something your son might say to you.
Oh, it happened today that he called daddy. Like I was trying to, my daughter hit her head very heavily on her back, and I was trying to put her to lay down because she had many concussions already. She's just so jumpy. So, and she would refuse, and I was in a struggle, and I was in a struggle to keep him away from her so she could lie down because they play a lot. So he was upset about all of this, and he said, "Just give me your phone, I'll call daddy." And he called daddy, and he complained about me doing this thing to them, like being, whatever, bossy or whatever he thought I am. And he said, "Daddy will come and he will scold you."
Ooh, okay. So first of all, you didn't need to give your son your phone. At that moment, I think I would not have given my son my phone. I would be like, excuse me, I'm the parent. I'm in charge here. I know you're not happy about what's going on, honey. Right now, you and I need to work together because your sister hurt her head. And as you know, when you have a concussion, you have to keep the brain from being shaken around again, or it's very dangerous. So what can we do to work together here? So that'd be the first thing is there's no reason to give him the phone. And when
Well, I
he's
think he took it himself and ran
okay,
away.
okay.
Yeah.
So he gets the phone and he makes the call. He says, Daddy's going to come and scold you. You can say, I see that's what you think. And I mean, I think the problem is if your husband was going to then come in and scold you in front of him, then that's what he'd think. It'd be a little hard to correct him. Do you know what I'm saying? But in general, if he would say something to you like, well, daddy's going to do this, you could just say, you know what? I'm your mother. I'm in charge here. I think there's probably some work you need to do inside yourself about stepping into your own power
Mhm.
and being the parent in charge. Because I think if your husband does put you down and scold you in front of the kids, it's pretty hard to feel like that. It's almost like you're an older kid instead of the parent, right? You know,
Mhm.
I think if you're in a relationship where you're used to being taken seriously as the parent, it wouldn't be an issue. But you're in a relationship where you're not. And so you've been put down. So the work always starts inside us. And I think there's work that you need to do. And it may be that you could do this work with another parent who could be your listening partner. It may be that you want a few sessions with someone who's a parenting coach where you actually try on your power and you say things like affirmations like, I'm the parent, I'm in charge here, I make the decisions, right? So that leads me to when I said that I think you have some work to do with your husband.
Mhm.
I think I would recommend that you have a conversation with your husband at some point without your kids around, and you say, I have something really important to me that I need to discuss with you. When you disagree with me and something that I'm doing, there will be times we disagree. No two humans always agree about things. It's totally fine to disagree with me. You can even disagree with me in front of the kids, but only if you can do it with respect. When you, and I won't ask you to model what your husband says, but when your son uses the word scold, it sounds like your husband scolds you. So I'm going to use that example. When you say blah, blah, blah to me in that tone of voice, it's a scolding. I don't think we should be talking to the children that way. And I insist that you do not talk to me that way. I am your wife. We are partners in this endeavor. I am not to be scolded. If you disagree with me, no problem. We can talk about it. We can work something out. What would your husband say if you said that to him?
He'll just, as usual, find something to kind of hide behind, or just start scolding me right there. I mean, like just arguing and being, just, he never agrees with anything, or he can't support a normal conversation that you could really feel he understands what both of us are saying. The purpose, it seems like, just to make sure everybody gets his right and that's it. You know.
He likes to be right, as do we all, but that doesn't mean he has to make someone else wrong. So my question for you is, are you ready to do something about this?
Mhm.
In other words, could you say to him, okay, when he then starts to make you wrong in that conversation, you can say, you know, this isn't working for us to talk about this just together. I would like to go to a counselor to speak about this together because it's really hurting our relationship. And it's not okay with me to live this way. What would he be willing to go with you if you said it that way?
Mm,
He
No,
would.
because
He would.
we've already talked about it so many times.
What country do you live in?
I live in Bulgaria right now.
So it's probably not a very common thing in Bulgaria for people to go to
Mm,
couples counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not part
But
of his. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, we both know English and we've had English speaking counselors before.
You have.
It kind of, yeah,
So you've
it's
spoken to
complicated.
counselors together? Have you spoken to counselors together?
Together too and separate and yeah. It's a long
Yeah.
story.
So
Never
first of
gave
all,
any fruit. Never gave any fruit.
he didn't.
Mm-mm,
He didn't
mm-mm,
wasn't interested
mm-mm.
in doing this. So I can't give you advice on whether to stay or go because I don't know your full situation. But I do think that if you start to do the work inside yourself to stand up for yourself, things will change. What I observe, I've seen hundreds of couples, maybe more, but certainly hundreds, who have situations like what you're describing when the person who's being demeaned begins to do the work inside themselves to stand up for themselves. Either the other person changes or the relationship ends up dissolving. And maybe that would not work for you economically or whatever. I don't know your situation. But most of the time, what I've seen is that it happens more gracefully than you'd think because the work is always inside us, the first work. And it's pretty hard to do that work when you're living with somebody who puts you down. It's the hardest thing in the world to do work to stand up for yourself when someone is putting you down. And probably the work includes work from your childhood. Probably it's reminiscent of how you were treated in childhood. I don't know, but usually when we are in a situation as adults where we're being treated in this way, it's because it feels familiar to us. But I want to add that if your daughter is being treated this way, it will be familiar to her, and this is not what you want for your daughter when she's grown. And we do know that sons pick up how the father treats the mother. When he hits the mother, the son grows up to hit his wife. That's what happens. It's not always, but it's very common. When fathers are demeaning toward their wives, the son picks that up and he's demeaning toward his wife. I know that this is not what you want for your son. So it's a really tough position to be in for you. And I think even if he won't go with you, I would get him on a Zoom screen with one of our coaches or with another counselor if he would do it. And I think it would make a difference. And if he ends up dropping out and doesn't want to do it, you would at least be talking to somebody who would support you in your growth. But I would try to get him there if you could. The stakes are pretty high and you deserve so much better.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to take a minute to answer the other pre-submitted question I mentioned. It was going to be for the end, but I'm going to answer it now because it has some similarities. And basically it's that they have a 6-year-old, almost 7-year-old, and the father says, well, why he should just do this because I say so, and doesn't want to follow the peaceful parenting precepts. And the mom feels like she's getting more and more upset at her husband because she was highly sensitive and her parents parented her in a way that was a no nonsense approach, sort of like what the husband is now using with their son. And it didn't work for her. She experienced it as very frightening. And she's worried that her husband is frightening her 6, 7-year-old. And it's triggering her to watch this happen. And that her son is becoming very upset and is now having violent outbursts. It's a new thing. And that her husband is increasingly unhappy, and that their relationship is increasingly strained. So my answer to that is a little bit like the answer I just gave, which is it's a really tough situation. Clearly, both people have things from their childhood. The mom in this case knows what it is that's triggering her. And the dad has probably was treated this way as a child and is passing that on to his son. Just do what I say, because that is a very common parenting approach. And again, I would say this is not something you should have to deal with alone. This is something you need support from a coach or a counselor to do, because it's hard to, you've taken this parent is in the success path, has taken the course, thought this would improve her relationship with her husband, and then didn't, made it worse, she says, because she got very clear that she likes this approach and is what works for her son. And she is more impatient than ever with her husband not being on board with it. So I would say, again, I'm going to recommend coaching for the couple. And if your husband is having an increasingly difficult time, you mentioned that he was having, there was specific in the note, I won't go into it, but there were specific things that the husband was struggling with. Again, he may need a counselor of his own to work on these issues, but I would just say, really, don't wait, go to counseling, because you don't want your child, your almost 7-year-old, to feel that he's causing the problems between you. Not a good situation. And it's not fair to him to be caught in the middle between you. And both of you need some support to work through your stuff and then work through it together so that you can offer your son the best parenting between you. Okay, so moving on. Thank you, Heidi, for putting the link to the parenting coaches. Tian, you were next. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Dr. Laura.
Hi.
So today I have a question about like sensory issues, and I'm hoping I can explain it well, because I have a hard time navigating. Like, I know sensory is a spectrum, and so everybody has different sensory needs. So when is a sensory need the thing that's like in the way and blocking it and needing help? So I have 3 boys, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And for the sake of context, I'm also pregnant, so that's also impacting family dynamics.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. So my 8-year-old is like a textbook example of like sibling rivalry, chip on the shoulder problem. And I'm working on it and trying to do like all the things, all the preventative maintenance tools and stuff as best as I can. And sometimes I think we're making progress, and sometimes I doesn't feel like we're making progress. But I'm trying to keep going. Yep. I'm reading. I'm in the middle of reading that right now. So we're trying to work on that. But sometimes it just feels like there's something else that's blocking it. And that's why I don't know. Intuitively, to me, that's kind of what I'm inclined to, but I kind of go through this cycle, like there's something else. And then I'm like, no, he's just a boy. He's just struggling with this. We just have to keep going. And at what point is it like, this is just too much? And just for like some examples, first of all, like he's always been a really needy kid. Like, I know in the course you talk about like the leaky cup. And when you say that, like, I feel like that kind of feels relatable to me, to him. And my husband feels that way too. It's just like he never has enough attention. It's never enough. And he does things like crashes into furniture like a lot, or like falls down. And I'm like, is it a cry for attention? But he, like, there's days when he'll do it. Like in 2 hours home from school, we've had like 6 altercations where he bonked his elbow and he crashed to the floor, or his brother's sitting on a chair and he'll go like lay right next to his brother and then he gets kicked. And of course he's like, it's Brandon's fault. I'm like, but you chose to lay right where someone was like moving their legs. Like, at what point is this a sibling thing? Is it just a cry for connection thing, or is there something else going on? Kind of.
So we know, and you've probably read this in the sibling book because it's in the beginning of the book talking about the research, that when kids have big needs, high needs kids, when their first sibling is born, their needs do not go away. And
Right.
and in fact, because you have a baby, their needs are not necessarily getting met, right? And so that is the start of the chip on the shoulder,
Yeah,
right?
I
The
feel
entrenched
the
resentment.
shoulder was created.
Yeah.
I've got a pretty, yeah.
Okay. So the healing of that, part of it is by really working hard to connect with them, really make your relationship with them great and meet their needs. Right. So that's all super important. And that would be true for any kid with big needs, really, or any kid. The sensory stuff, it sounds to me like he does have some sensory issues, the crashing into things and whatever. I think that doesn't cause a chip on the shoulder. It may be, though, that it's part of, that who he is his profile is of a high needs person who also has big sensory needs, maybe, right? Like he wants to be close. So he worms his way in there and then gets stepped on, right? But he is trying to connect. And I think just the way to handle those things with an 8-year-old is just you wanted to be close. You wanted to be right in there, didn't you? And then you got stepped on. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Right? Yes, Brandon did step on you. Brandon, did you mean to step on your brother? No, Brandon didn't mean to step on you, but you wanted to be close to him. You wanted to be part of everything. So you got right in there, didn't you? And you lay right there and then it happened. I'm so sorry. Right? It's nobody's fault. Nobody's bad. Nobody's wrong. It's just he had this need and that's what he tried to fill it in a way that wasn't so useful. And that's why he got stepped on, right? But that's not causing the sibling issues, right?
Mhm.
The sibling issues are being caused by the fact that he was a big needs kid and then his Brandon was born and then the 2-year-old was born and someone's about to have another baby. So there's a lot of healing work to do here with the entrenched resentment. Now he might be fine with the 2-year-old and the baby. Often that's the case that they never forgive the second kid for being born, but they're fine with the third and the fourth, right? Sometimes that's the case, but also sometimes they're just traumatized over and over again. Like, I can't get my needs met, right? So it's a lot on you to show up for him. I don't know what the profile is of your 5-year-old and your 2-year-old, but it is a lot for you to show up for him and to really try to it's about meeting his needs. It's also about helping him feel safe to articulate to you his resentments. Like it's so hard to be the big brother sometimes, right? So I'm going to just throw this in the chat here for everybody. This is from our Success Path sibling spotlight, and it is about healing entrenched resentment. And so you probably know everything that's on that sheet, but it'll have some good reminders. But if you look at it, you'll notice that part of it is about your relationship, right? But and meeting their needs and nurturing him. But it's also about nurturing the sibling bond. It's also about helping him to vocalize his upset, not to his brother, not to Brandon, but to you. And it's also about being clear that he's not allowed to indulge himself against his sibling, right? So you have clear expectations for civility in your family. That's what's contained on that sheet. And that, you said you're doing all the things. So probably this is all review for you, but I think it's useful to have that framework that those are the 4 things you're working on.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So
I was going to add, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was going to add, in terms of meeting his needs in current day, one kind of a quick practical way to reframe that is to keep him physically close. So almost like maybe for the next month, think of him as like your buddy, like you're like supervising him, or not even supervising him, but almost like he's going to be like training with you, but you're not training him. You're really just trying to stay in close proximity, body doubling. And part of why he's tripping and falling and kind of bumping into things is his sensory system is probably dysregulated. And so if you are physically closer to him, you're going to help him regulate. So it sounds like he's sensory seeking maybe. And so like he needs maybe like deep pressure, like heavy muscle work, deep pressure points. So maybe even setting a routine where you're keeping him relatively close to you throughout the day, checking in on him, and then maybe giving him like a hug every 2 hours, like a deep pressure hug that helps with sensory. But I think you can kind of knock out two things with one: meet his needs and the sensory thing, right? Physical co-regulation near each other, and like, you know, what's going on? What do you need? You know, is there something I can help with? What's, you know, I want to hear what's going on. And he might not have complaints about what's going on throughout the day, so you can reframe it in a delightful way. Like, that was really cute that you did that. What are you working on? So it's not like you're meeting his, like, you know, like he's crying about stuff constantly, but you're also just delighting in him. And that's part of the chip on the shoulder as well. So yeah, just physical proximity is, I think, really important. But when you have a lot of kids, you probably feel like you're around them all the time. Kind of try to isolate him and pull him back in, because he's probably the one that's furthest away because he's the most independent. Hey, come on over here. I wanted to ask you about something. Come give me a hug, big guy. You know, like, you're my
Usually-
big guy.
But I'm trying to think of other physical. He likes like side hugs, but he doesn't like tight. It's weird, but he's not a big hugger. And if I try and like, I mean, maybe it's just an 8-year-old thing, but if I try and like kiss him right now, he literally like freaks out. He's very weird about physical affection.
Does he like it from his siblings? The physical affection sounds like he likes to cuddle up next to them.
But he doesn't cuddle up next to them. He likes to sit next to them so he can get, like I said, and like kicked. He likes to like wrestle and be like physical that way, but not like cuddle. He doesn't like people in his space for that purpose. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy of things. It's confusing.
I would wonder whether that is vulnerability that he doesn't want to feel. It's possible.
Okay.
Or whether, in fact, it's a sensory thing that he doesn't want to be touched. Could be, you know, we'd have to respect that. But it's also entirely possible that the needs feel so big to him that he doesn't want to admit they're there. And he doesn't want anything to remind him they're there.
So does that mean I still so I try to touch him more to open up the vulnerability, or I try and like honor his.
It's a dance. You take your cues. You don't obviously, you know, we don't like force our touch on someone. On the other hand, when you can, you touch, right? So you try to touch as much as you can. You said he'll do side hugs, do a lot of side hugs. And then while you're doing those side hugs, you know, slip in as much affection as you can. You know, maybe he won't let you kiss him, but you can, like, you know, kiss his shoulder, right? Yeah, you know, and maybe he'll freak out and you won't let you do that. But that's what I don't think kissing is going to set him off in a sensory way. That's why I'm thinking this might be about vulnerability.
Okay. So and then picking along with that recently too, if we like say like, oh, I love you, or like he like it's like, ew, it's so disgusting, I hate that word, don't say it. Is that like another do you think that could be like another vulnerability kind of a thing too?
Yes,
Really?
I do.
So just affection in other ways, maybe?
It does sound like he has big needs that he doesn't want to even go near because they are a source of pain for him from a long time ago, probably.
Okay.
There's some great stuff in the chat here that I won't rehash, but that you're going to want to take a look at. Did anybody else have any words of wisdom that you wanted to share with Tian? Okay.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
It's when a child has lots of needs and they're so sensitive, and you know, there's probably some sensory stuff and they're really sensitive emotionally, like that's just so hard to meet all of their needs. It's just, I don't know, I guess maybe this is just empathy more than advice, but it's just, it's just so hard to even figure out what all these needs are. You know, your kid has a lot of needs, but it's sometimes really hard to figure out what exactly those are to meet them. And so I put a couple ideas in the chat. You can look at them, and some other people have some good ideas too. But yeah, just like, I mean, if the sensory stuff is a piece of it, then, you know, kind of figuring out their sensory profile, whether on your own or with some other help, to figure out, you know, what else can I do to meet their sensory needs? What can I do to meet their attachment needs and their emotional needs? Like, there's just so many different types of needs, that it is hard. But the better you get to know your kid, the better you're able to get to know those needs and then be able to meet them. And each little piece like makes a difference. You know, figuring out the sibling piece makes a difference. Figuring out some of the sensory stuff makes a difference. Figuring out how they best receive your love and affection and delight makes a difference. Building in more preventive maintenance and connection, like all of those will make a little bit of a difference. And so everything will be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I like the idea of the different categories because I do get overwhelmed trying to figure out all his needs. So maybe if I categorize it just a little bit, helps kind of
That's great.
the jumble.
Yeah. Thank you, Heidi. And I
Great.
think Betsy's comment about roughhousing is true also. You said he loves to wrestle with his sibs. So, you know, it's the kind of thing where you could do, you know, a little bit of roughhousing with him physically, and then that could end maybe in a hug, right? That once he's able to do that physical roughhousing with you and laugh, that he might relax into the physical closeness a little bit. I don't know whether that's something that he'll let you do with him.
We do a little bit. It's just hard for me right now to do a lot of roughhousing. He's big.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Okay, good luck. And we're going to move on. Our next person is Bunny.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm actually asking a question about something my friend told me about her granddaughter and the snottiness that her granddaughter is towards my friend. Is that okay that I ask that question? Because
It's fine. Did you say snottiness or naughtiness?
snotty.
That's what I thought you said. Okay, go ahead.
And I've been thinking ever since she told me about it, what would I do? What would you say? And so I wanted to ask you. So a couple examples are my friend was in the child's bathroom brushing her teeth, and the child is 4. And there's 4 children, but I'm not sure of all their ages. And she's 4 and she comes in, "What are you doing in my bathroom? Get out." Or my friend sees the child's clothes on the floor in the garage, and she picks up, you know, her socks and her coat, and the child goes, "But I did say you could to pick up and touch my clothes. What are you doing?" So those are 2 easy examples of things she's told me, and I just wonder what we could do to help her with that.
Okay, this is a great question.
Okay.
Does anybody else have an answer? Bunny, you said you'd given a lot of thought to this. I'd love to hear what you think before we go further. Because one of the things we're doing is developing everybody's skills here, right? Go ahead.
Right. I feel kind of like overwhelmed, but the thing that after reading your stuff and thinking about it a lot is something like, wow, you must be really upset about something to talk to me that way. And I, you know, that's example from your books. And those are things I thought about, getting down and saying, like, even getting down and looking at her eye to eye. Wow, I'm surprised you're talking to me in that tone of voice. What's going on? What's the problem? You say it so much better, but that's the kind of idea I've been thinking instead of punishing, and my friend will spank her grandchild, and getting down and finding out. And as I'm listening to everybody, it's a lot of it is learning how to talk with the child. Not to say it's okay that you're talking to me like that, but to find out what's happening with the child. And I, of course, grew up and did not raise my children that way. And so it is hard for me, and I'm trying to learn how to do it.
I
with
love
my
that.
grandchildren.
So this is your friend, and this is her granddaughter, the 4-year-old, not her daughter. And does your
Correct.
friend live with the granddaughter, or she's visiting?
She's babysitting. And I
Babysit.
think she used, well, no, I was going to say, I think she used to live with them, but the child's only 4 and she hasn't lived with them. It's been like 9 or 10 years since she lived there, my
Okay.
friend.
Okay. So it is a more complicated situation when it's the grandmother, right? And or a
Right.
babysitter or both at once, than if it's your parent, right? If it's a parent with their 4-year-old. Because that's really a lot of hostility that the child
Yeah.
is exhibiting, right? It's a lot of hostility. And so it makes me wonder, why is there a disruption in the relationship to this degree that a 4-year-old is acting like this to the guardian, the person who's caring for her, the caregiver? But it makes a little more sense when I hear, number one, that the grandmother spanks her in reaction to stuff like this. That makes a lot of sense to me. And two, that she doesn't live there. So she's there. So who knows under what circumstance, she's in there as a babysitter,
Oh,
and where the parents are, and who knows what kind of parenting the parents usually do. We don't know that. But we have a situation where the child has a lot of feelings about this person who's there taking care of her, number one, right? So she has negative feelings like, what are you doing in my bathroom, right? And then when she expresses her indignation about, why are you here using my bathroom, when this person, this older person who happens to be her grandmother, so we think when we hear this, of course she should have affection and respect for this grandmother, but we don't know what the grandmother's done to earn affection and respect. We do know that there's a situation where the child's like, what are you doing in my bathroom? Brushing your teeth. That's my sink, whatever. And if grandma responds by spanking her for her insolence, then you could assume that the next thing that happens when she picks up the coat is, don't you touch my coat, right? There's a power struggle. Clearly, there's a war going on, is what I would say. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I think it's not really it is a parenting question if this were the parent, but if this were the parent, the child would actually have a different relationship with the parent that would cause her probably to have, she wouldn't be insolent in the same way, I don't think. Because usually what happens is, if you have a parent who spanks on a regular basis, the child is more cowed and they learn to lie and they learn to manipulate the parent, and then they act out like crazy later, like as teenagers, they're very good liars. But strong-willed kids, and this child may be a strong-willed child, some kids will not play that game. They will not lie to get around the parent. They just taunt them, etc. And those are the kids that end up getting beaten. I mean, if parents are spankers, right? It ends up getting, out of hand very quickly. Since she's the 4th child, if you said there are 4 children in the home and she's a 4-year-old, so I assume third child.
I'm not sure which. I think she has children on both,
On both sides.
siblings on both sides.
So we don't know what the situation is with the parents, right? But and it sounds like the child is struggling to me. A child who responds that way to grandma, why are you in my bathroom brushing your teeth, is struggling. So we can't surmise what's going on with the parents and these 4 children, but something that's not good would be my assumption based on what you've told me. But anyway, if I were talking to your friend, the grandmother, I would say, is this the relationship you want to have with your granddaughter, where you spank her? That's where I'd start. And then I would ask, would you be willing to consider things from her perspective?
Okay.
And maybe before I ask that question, I would back up and offer her some empathy. Like, it must be awful to have your granddaughter say to you, how dare you touch my coat? How dare you use my bathroom? That must feel awful. And it's totally out of line. It's insolent. It's rude. It's not the way your granddaughter should treat you. I agree with you completely. And it sounds to me like she's struggling. So would you be willing to consider this from her point of view? That's probably how I'd ask it.
Okay.
And then when she says, from her point of view, she just has to act right, you can say, she's only 4. Something's going on here for her to act this way. So we need to get curious and understand that a little better. Spanking her is not going to solve the problem. How many times have you spanked her?
Yeah.
Has it worked? Has it stopped the insolence? Would you be willing to try something else? And the
Okay.
something else is connection.
Yeah.
The something else is when the next time the granddaughter says any of these hurtful things, something very similar to what you just demonstrated, getting down to her level, looking her in the eye and saying, wow, you're pretty upset at me. I wouldn't say you're upset about something, tell me what's going on, because she's a 4-year-old. I would just acknowledge you're pretty upset at me. You don't want me in your bathroom. You're pretty upset at me. You don't want me to touch your coat. I was trying to help because it was on the floor, but you really don't even want me to touch it. You're so upset at me. Things between us have been so hard, haven't they? I hurt your body, didn't I? You hurt my feelings when you told me XYZ and I spanked you and I hurt your body. I am so sorry that I did that. And you were still pretty mad at me about it, huh? Now, your friend may feel like it's not appropriate for her to apologize. I believe when we hurt another human being, we owe them an apology, regardless of their age. And in our society, parents have been told that they have the right to violate a child's body.
Mhm.
But I do not believe that's true, and I do not think the child ever forgets it.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Anybody have, go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, I was going to add, it's so hard sometimes talking to adults about peaceful parenting when they're not familiar with it. What's kind of the magical statement to say to get them to
Right.
believe us? So I definitely agree with empathy being the first place, because any resistance coming at you, you're going to end up going back to empathy. So just start with empathy. It's so hard. 4-year-olds can be really hard, and they can be bossy, and they can say no. And I remember, my grandkids sometimes do that. If you can relate and just kind of get on the same team as her, like, it's so hard, and they can make it so tough. And remember, connection for kids is like their biological imperative. This is how they are wired to survive, to connect to an adult, because their brains are really, like, if you think about what's in their brain, it's like a smaller brain. Yours is like fully grown, but theirs is smaller. And the only way it gets bigger is through connected, warm relationships with an adult. So when they're misbehaving, it's so hard. And we have to remember they're like little primates. They're trying to do the best they can, and oftentimes it's clumsy and it's messy, and but what they're really needing for that brain to learn to listen and cooperate with us is that it's connection with us. So, I wonder how you could intervene in that moment with more connection. And I know it's hard sometimes. You feel like spanking and you feel like disciplining, and that's usually because you're tired too. Like, you've had enough. You're exhausted. So I don't know how open she is to science and brain development. So you might have to try different angles to see kind of what sits with her. But often when they don't understand the education of brain development, that can be an opportunity to educate adults about, well, you know how the brain works. Like, babies' brains are born a certain way and they need, like, to be held. You wouldn't spank a baby. A 4-year-old still has a small brain, and it needs time to grow. In the meantime, what we have to give it is some connection, and an adult that's calm. And so maybe starting there with a little bit of education about the brain.
I've been thinking a lot about it and thinking how to be a good parent, thinking through what you encourage us to do is like really self-sacrificing. Like you say, stop, let go of your agenda, breathe to calm yourself, and look at the child, just like Deanna said. And I didn't do that, and I'm not blaming myself. I'm just like, wow, parenting is really, really hard to do it really well, and to let go of all of those feelings in myself and the anger, when your grandchild says snotty stuff to you or your child. Uh, so I really appreciate the opportunity to learn how to do it different. And it's exciting to see my daughter, who has a a 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and a baby, and see how she has developed all of that in my granddaughter. It's really exciting to see that happening and learning, help me learn how to do it too. Thank you.
Bunny, it is hard. It's heroic work. Not just because we're showing up at times when we might not have a lot inside to give at those times. There are certainly times when we have to show up for our kids, but also because so many of us were raised in a way that we don't want to pass on. And that's where the healing, the pain the definition of violence or the cause of violence is when we don't deal with our own pain, we put it on other people. And so that's what creates violence in the world. So if we could each take responsibility to work on our own pain, it would transform the world. But it's hard to do. It's painful. That's the whole point, is that the pain is there and we have to work on it and take responsibility for it. And so that friend of yours who's the grandma, we're asking a tremendous amount of her to
Yes.
not respond with violence, in a sense, spanking or just emotional violence to her granddaughter. But if she can do that, she's giving her granddaughter the most amazing gift that is not passing that pain on, right? And as you say, your own daughter is already doing this for your grandchildren.
Mhm.
So it is the hardest work in the world, and I think the most important.
Mm.
I'm glad you're here doing it.
Yes, I think about when I spanked my daughter, and that I need to go and apologize to her, and when I want to do that when I have the opportunity, and just apologize for that.
Now, I'm sure that would be so meaningful to your daughter to have you apologize. Would be so meaningful to her. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are an awful lot of adults out there who wish their parents could talk to them about their childhoods and acknowledge the pain. And again, there's no blame here. There's no shame.
Right.
We all did the best we could with what we had. But I think the healing, truth and reconciliation commissions, the way they work, somebody has to tell the truth for there to be the reconciliation. And the truth is, this happened to me, and then it has to be heard, right? For there to be the reconciliation. So what you're saying is that you would hear and you would apologize, which is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda, you're up. I mean, can you hear me? You might be not able to hear me.
Hi, thank you. Last night, my 8-year-old. Oh, am I cutting out?
I can hear you fine. I see your face, so I'm not
Oh,
seeing that your face is talking. But there you are. Okay, your face.
Okay, sorry.
No, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So last night, my 8-year-old son, who's our oldest, shared with us that he doesn't like his appearance, that he doesn't.
I lost you.
Yeah.
Amanda. There you are. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. But yeah, he doesn't like the shape of his head, his face, his appearance. And I'm just trying to learn and have help in figuring out how I can support him in feeling better about himself. Because he doesn't like the way he looks.
So this is he. So I have a bunch of questions that I'm just wondering about here as we think about this. Like what, because many people who are 8 never think twice about what they look like.
Right.
What's causing him to struggle with his appearance in this way?
So I know, so about 5 months ago, I got diagnosed, or I got Lyme disease, and it caused facial paralysis on the left side of my face.
Okay.
So I have a long road of recovery. I'm much better, but I was way worse than what I am. So he has seen me having to do physical therapy and heat and massage and exercises. I have to do it at least twice a day, and I go in to the doctors to do it quite frequently. So I know he's been experiencing that, which has definitely changed our lives. But I've tried to like stay positive and not like saying anything about the facial looks, or what's going on with the face or having it be a horrible thing. Um, so I don't know if he still took from that and now is reflecting on the way he looks. I know the school that he's gone to, he has had some children already give him a hard time and just say unkind words to him. But that was more to do with sports. He's not so athletic. So that was revolving sports. But when I asked if any children in his class or the other classes have mentioned the way he looked, he said no.
Hmm. Well, does he talk to you about the sequelae of the Lyme disease, like whether you'll have a total recovery or whether does he have any sense of guilt about anything related to it or
He was very, very scared. And I said, that's normal, but this is something that I can recover from. This is something that I can do. Trying to have him know that like he doesn't have to worry about me. He needs to focus on himself. Um, and I did mention that it's a very long road of recovery. They are talking about how I might have to have surgery and everything. So I have talked to him a little bit about it, but I mentioned it along with this is something that can help me heal.
I'm so sorry about your Lyme disease.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
I'm sure for you, you've had to be really focused on this and your healing, which is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And so your 8-year-old could certainly be, I mean, he certainly would be affected by this. Whether he would be affected by it in a way that would make him say, I don't like the shape of my head, who knows?
Right.
But he certainly has
Yeah.
been looking at your face a lot, I'm betting, right?
Yes.
And when kids are unkind at school and they're unkind about sports, sometimes that becomes unkindness about things in general, like, you know, so and so, you're lousy at sports, could be so and so, you look funny, right? So
Mhm.
it's possible that he's faced that kind of unkindness. Um, but feeling, to go from those two things to feeling like there's something wrong with him concerns me,
Right.
right? That's where I'm
Yes.
still curious and trying to get my um clarity about what could be going on with him that he has a sense that there's something wrong with him, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's about. You said how to help him with his self-esteem. Self-esteem is there's nothing wrong with me. I'm great. I'm a human being and I am worthy of everything that all human beings are, even though I'm not perfect. I mean, that would be healthy self-esteem, right? But there's something wrong with me. It isn't just self-esteem. There's like a specific thing going on somehow that he doesn't like the way his head is shaped, you said. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking that he's seizing on this as this is just a theory, that he's seizing on that as a way to work with some kind of feeling, like the feeling of being out of control that mommy's sick, the feeling of not being good enough with sports, the feeling that I'm not good enough to save my mom. Um, my mom is in this dangerous place that she, her face is not like it usually is. And she says it's going to be a long road and she might even have surgery. And, I'm pretty sure that this is related and that he's taking all of those upset feelings of powerlessness and inadequacy. I can't affect this thing that is so important to me, my mother's health. I can't even do sports at school. And that he's taking that and he's sort of twisting them into self-loathing. And we've all, by the way, everybody on this call, I'm sure, has at some point or other experienced self-loathing where we just feel like we're not good enough. And the way self-loathing works, it's not directly like boost the self-esteem. It's more like there's something that's getting in our way that's making us feel bad that we need to actually work on, right? So your question was, how do I support my son's self-esteem? I would say we have two things to do here. One is the positive, the supporting the self-esteem, and the other is, what are all these feelings and does he have an opportunity to work through them? Because I think that this is coming from the lack of well-being, right? The feeling of not of something being wrong. There's
Okay,
something.
because I felt like at 8, it really surprised me, and I couldn't respond right away because I just felt the same of 8 years old, you shouldn't be even thinking about this at this moment or have this in your mind. So it really shocked me that he even had those thoughts.
Well, I'm surprised too, so I can see why you were shocked, but we don't want to respond to any human who has feelings by thinking they're shocking. And I mean, we can think whatever we want. We can have whatever reaction we want. That's who we are. But I'm saying to respond as if it's shocking makes that person feel like there's something wrong with them more, right? So totally I understood that you were shocked because I'm quite surprised to hear this also. I think going back to your son, you could say, I've been thinking about what you told your dad and me last night, how you really don't like the shape of your head. If that was the specific words he used, I would use the words he used.
Okay.
And I didn't say much because honestly, I was surprised to hear it. But I want to say, I was surprised because I think your head is beautiful. But I want to say that I understand you feeling that way. And I think everybody has felt that way sometime, like there was something that they didn't like about themselves. It's a hard thing to feel. It's a very hard thing to feel. And I wish that you didn't feel it. I don't want you to feel that way, but I understand that you do. And you can always tell me when you feel something like this. And I will always understand and I will always try to help. So tell me more about it. I would use that kind of an opening.
Right.
And, you can play this back so you get the various parts of it, but it's really like acknowledging that everybody has felt this before, that you didn't say anything at the moment because you were surprised and that you think he's perfect the way he is. And
Mhm.
it must be very painful to feel the way he feels and you understand and you're right there and you want to hear more, right? And then
Right.
when he says, well, I don't like the shape of my head, there's something wrong with my head, say, that must hurt so much to be feeling that way about your poor head. And you don't want to make light of his feelings, but you also can probably, it depends on how his affect is in that moment, but I would touch his head and stroke I would be like, I love your head exactly as it is. There's nothing weird about your head. And I hear you saying that you feel it's body dysmorphia, right? When we have this sense of like there's something wrong with my elbow. My elbow's a problem, even though my elbow is completely not, right? So that's
Right.
what's going on with him right now. So to both acknowledge, but also be the outside voice that says your head is just fine. But you can invite him to say, like, show me what you mean. Like, touch your head and tell me what you feel. Like, doesn't that feel good when you touch your head? Like you're trying to just give him an alternate experience of his head, that there's nothing, that he can touch it and it's fine, right?
Right.
And you're not trying to deny his experience. It's a little tricky to walk that balance beam, but you can, and he might say, no, look at it, look at the shape. And you can say, but so you feel like that shape isn't okay, huh? You want to look in the mirror with me? I mean, you're not trying to talk him out of it. You're acknowledging it, but you're also saying, oh, your poor head, it doesn't like her in that, right?
Right.
You're trying to walk both sides of it at once, where you're not making him wrong. You're not denying it. You're accepting it. You're saying that must be so hard to feel like that. And yet at the same time, you're being the outs. You're not going to go in there and say, yeah, I can see why you don't like your head. Your part of you is like, that's the most, like, of course your head is great, right? But we need to do both. And as you do both, he has both sides inside him. As you speak to both sides of him, you're gonna hear the voice of both sides. He's gonna be like, yeah, but my head isn't, like if he gets to tears, that would be great. Because my hunch is that these feelings, I said you have to go do two things at once, support the self-esteem. But the other part is my hunch is that this is really about the feelings.
Hmm.
Might even the way into them is going to be through roughhousing. And that if you roughhouse with him, with his strong, wonderful body, words that we would always use with our kids, you're strong, you know, healthy body. And then you roughhouse with him and he probably would get to the point he would laugh and then start to cry, because I'm betting he's carrying an enormous amount of pain related to your health struggles. That's my hunch, is that that's what's going on and he doesn't know what to do with it. So he's targeting it in his own body. That's my hunch.
Right.
So I think we want to resolve those feelings by allowing them to come up verbally in any way that they do, but also through laughter. And we want to empower him that his body is great and he can do things that will make his body even healthier and happier, like eating healthy food and going for walks. And I know he's not a sports kid, or at least he hasn't felt competent at sports, but that doesn't mean you can't kick a soccer ball with him or go outside and do things.
Right.
I don't know if you can roughhouse, but if his dad can roughhouse with him. So
Yeah, his dad's been roughhousing. I can't.
Okay.
So,
But I think the roughhousing thing is actually really important for him right now.
okay.
And I think this is about powerlessness. So if you can use any of the games that and if you're short on games, put it in the Facebook group, the Success Path Facebook group, and people will chime in with games, but there are also some in the workbook. Pointing to this because there's some in the workbook. I know that. So you're looking for games specifically about power. You want him. And again, if your husband has to do it instead of you, fine, but like push across the room, give him opportunities to feel powerful, because I think
Right.
probably feeling powerless. And that's why he's aiming his self-loathing at himself.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anybody have any other words of wisdom on supporting Amanda's son and her?
I can add just a playful idea. Dr. Larry Cohen, he might suggest something like an object that you can use to represent Lyme disease. And you play like a game, because if it is about powerlessness, it's about that Lyme disease is more powerful than he feels, or it's taken over his life somehow. And so whether like you can pretend to be like, does he want to be Lyme disease? Do you want to be Lyme disease? Does some other third thing want to be Lyme disease? And then and obviously you'd have to process your own emotions about it before you're able to do this, but externalizing it so that he has an opportunity to overpower it and play. So, the big bad Lyme disease is going to get you. And then it runs and falls and tumbles. And then he comes and so yeah, you kind of have to obviously work through it on your own, because it is a lot. It's a lot for you, and also a lot of empathy for you. This is really hard. And, I know kids are kind of mirrors of our own internal states. And I think that when you're able to process more of it yourself as well, he will he will process some more of his as well. But it's like a family thing, right? Everybody's impacted by it. Like you said, it changed your whole family
Yeah.
dynamic. So no wonder he feels like he has part of it too. Like he's got Lyme disease somehow, through relationship. So can
Mhm.
the whole family gang up against Lyme disease? Let's take this. This is our Lyme disease, the soccer ball. And you're like, let's all put our hands on it with daddy. Let's just throw it across the fence. Get out of here. Sometimes I wish I could do that too. I know it's really hard. And we've got this, we're a team. We're going to get rid of this Lyme disease. Let's kick it. So like a symbolic, like powering over together, even though, it's not fully transformed yet. Yeah, just some ideas to incorporate it into play.
No, thank you. I appreciate that because I know and I've seen, yeah, the challenging behaviors out of but this was a whole different level to say something about themselves. But thank you.
I think Rokio's comment is actually quite profound about how the physical body is not something we choose. We're all given our physical bodies, right? And we end up with illnesses or struggles physically that we obviously don't choose. And Rokio is saying it's an inspiration. It's something we don't choose, but we live in. I think we also have to choose to love our physical bodies, regardless of what physical body we were given, right? I think that's healthy. And I think most people, certainly most women in the world, can relate to this isn't necessarily the physical body I would have chosen because there's so much pressure put on appearance in this culture, especially for women, but really increasingly with social media for boys, teenage boys, as well. So I'm not saying that he's affected your son by social media or anything at this point, but I do think that talking on a regular basis about when I was young, I wished my body was different. Like I wished I was taller, or I wished I was shorter, or I wished I was something, anything you want to come up with. And you know what? Now I really love exactly the way my body is. So you might not always love the way your head is shaped right now, but you might find that you'll choose to love your head because it's your head. And it doesn't have to look like anybody else's head or anybody else's idea of the perfect head. It's your head, and that's reason enough to love it just the way it is. Just like I love you just the way you are, no matter what. You're perfect to me. I think that kind of a message, so that you're modeling that for him and that he's learning. And we all need to do this for our children, I think, is that kind of self-love, self-acceptance, regardless of what we've been given. It's a
Right.
lot harder when we're talking about our physical struggles and something. You
Mhm.
don't have to love Lyme disease to love your strong body fighting back and asserting itself against the Lyme disease, right?
Right.
I think that's the modeling that you're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck to you.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
So we're about at the end of our time. I don't see any other hands. I think we got to all of our questions today. Some really big questions today. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and for your courage and for showing up and doing this really hard work. Every one of you. It's a gift to me to see each of you being so brave to come and do this work. And I know to come on the screen and do this work, but also just to go back into your life and do this work every single day. I know that's hard. And so I'm very grateful to you for the work you're doing to make the world a better place, as well as make things better for your kids and for yourself. Thank you. So unmute yourselves and say goodbye, and have a great rest of December. Happy holidays, regardless of what holiday you celebrate, if you celebrate a December holiday. And we'll see you at office hours in early January.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
luck.